walls. White walls. White, padded walls. Day in, day out. White, padded fucking walls. Let me tell you why I see these white padded walls day in and day out. I am, or at least according to several doctors, certifiably insane. Hallucinations, paranoia, schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, the list goes on and on. I was a normal, working-class man living the American dream. I had a wife and 2 children. My income was high, my debt was low. I had everything. But things just had to go wrong. They started to even go in a direction that I couldn't even fathom. My wife and I had always planned to go to the British Isles, but for the longest time, the money just wasn't there. It took 7 years and 2 promotions before I could even think about that realistically. Well, anyways, after months of careful planning and preparation, we were on a plane flying over the Atlantic Ocean. Just me and her. No kids, no job. Nothing but beautiful scenery and relaxation for 24 straight days. Let's fast forward a week. Having taken in many of the big city sights, we decided to see some of the smaller places out in the far countryside. We packed a small bag of essentials and took a cab out into the rural side of England. This is where things started to go wrong. Not, oh no, the world is ending, wrong. But damn, did it sure feel like it. We came across an old tailor and a moderately decorated cabin. He said he had been making suits for over 65 years. My interest was piqued. I decided to splurge a little bit and buy one. Nothing beats the craftsmanship of a home-tailored suit. After paying for it and calling a cab, a picture on the wall caught my eye. It was old. Black and white. Mid-50s, from what I could tell. It was a very tall, very slim man, wearing a suit and standing on a grassy plain. His face appeared to be smudged out of the whole picture. It was so old, I didn't think much of it. Even so, something was just so unnerving about this picture. It gave me an odd vibe. It felt almost menacing. I inquired about the photo to the old man, but he refused to talk about it. And that just added fuel to my mental fire. Days upon days passed, and my wife and I took in every sight, every castle, and every plane we possibly could. But alas, we eventually had to go home. Part of us wanted to stay, but we were so exhausted. There was no way we could spend any longer down there. Our flight back home was vague, as we were both asleep most of the time. The drive back home was quite hazy. All we wanted to do was just relax. As I pulled into the driveway, something was off. Something just didn't feel right. I got the same feeling I had when I saw that picture inside that tailor's house. It was that feeling of dread, but curiosity. I didn't want to continue, but my mind forced me to. I stepped out of my car, and when I stood onto the concrete, my legs gave out. I fell to the ground, and my right hand found itself unable to force myself back up. Jeez, I must have been more tired than I thought. My wife... oh dear, my wife helped me up and supported me up to the bedroom. I knew I was going to be asleep for a very long time. Or so I thought. That night, I was plagued by nightmares of that suited man on the grassy plain. It wasn't really a bad dream as much as it was his presence haunting me in my subconscious. Just standing there. Unnaturally tall, unnaturally thin. Standing there. No face. No identity. No matter how much I tried, his face just wouldn't focus. It was as though the picture had come alive in my thoughts but remained unchanged. This went on until I was abruptly woken up by the sound of a lamp smashing. Raced down 2 flights of stairs leading from the bedroom to the living room. Armed only a brick that I used as a doorstop, I slowly crept to where our lamp used to be. I knelt down to pick up a piece to examine when I felt a slight blow of wind from behind me. Like a person running past, I shot up faster than a startled cat. I spun around to see who it was. My eyes had still not adjusted to the surroundings. But I still couldn't see anything in this darkness, and my next thought was to listen, but there was nothing. Not a single damn thing. Not even the sound of the house settling. Maybe it was my nightmare. Or maybe all this fatigue was playing tricks on me. Maybe we just had a slight tremor, and that caused the lamp to fall off. Regardless, I was tired, and I just sorely needed some nightmare-free sleep. But that just couldn't happen, could it? The Slender Man was everywhere within my dreams. He was a bit curious, though. He only ever seemed to cautiously hide behind trees. Only in the original photo was he so exposed. Even subconsciously, I wish I hadn't moved next to a forest where he could be lurking, watching, analyzing anything about me and my family. It didn't take long to force myself awake. 10:46 a.m. I looked to the left. I looked to my right. My wife was calmly sleeping. Lucky her. I dragged myself out of bed and slowly made my way downstairs. I half expected the TV to be blaring and my kids' eyes glued to the screen. Then I realized that they're at their grandma's house still. Although they were due back that day. Oh, I was gonna miss the quiet. But it was alright. I missed my children more than I ever would any sort of noise. I continued down the stairs, hoping that a game of solitaire in the computer would somehow help all this sleep. But something made me feel very weak and hollow when I saw that lamp. It wasn't broken anymore. It wasn't brand new either. Someone took the pieces and shoddily glued them back together. And the glue wasn't glue, it was black and rubbery like tar. I would have tasted it for origin, but that's never a good idea. I need to wake my wife up. I tried explaining what had happened the night before, about the lamp and the nightmares and such, but she just rolled her eyes and told me that I was on something. Wives. Sometimes I think they do it on purpose. Anyways, still feeling uneasy from this morning, I managed to force myself to look out the window into the forest behind our house. Surprisingly, it was very calm. Nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't completely dark, so it didn't look nearly as ominous as it does at night. I was badly lamenting this night in particular. Suddenly, I saw a light jump out of the corner of my eye that caused me to nearly jump out of my skin. Jeez. It's just the kids being dropped off. I swear, I'm thinking way too much on this. I couldn't keep my nerves steady half the time. Hours passed. We play with the children, and then we put them to bed. Finally, I got some relaxation time. We laid on the couch, my wife asleep on my chest. Even I was nodding off, and I slowly closed my eyes. It wasn't long before the quiet was broken, and my wife and I were woken up. A window had broken upstairs. In a panic fury, we ran up the stairs as fast as we could. Our eldest son was scared out of his mind, said it came from his brother's room. Without even thinking, I kicked the door in. Only the nightlight in the far corner of the room brought light into the pitch-black room. And there he was, the man from my dreams, the Slender Man, hovering over my son. Having seen him, acted without even knowing what was going on. I threw punches, long, black tendrils whipped about. The last thing I remember was being held tightly above the ground and thrown against the wall. That's when I blacked out. When I came to, my wife was in tears. I had 3 cracked ribs. My son was gone. My son was gone. The Slender Man took my son, and I could do nothing about it. He had my son, and I couldn't do anything. I let him take him. Oh, but I knew he was going to come back, and that is when I was going to get him for taking him. The rest of the day was full of emotion. My wife couldn't hardly stop crying. My other son was in a constant state of shock. What am I talking about? I can't even talk. I cannot think straight. I did, however, manage to call the police. I told them that my son had been abducted by a man in a long black suit. I kept the details of the tendrils to myself in fear that they wouldn't believe a damn thing I was saying. But that was the least of my worries. I needed to figure out when that bastard would return. The police showed up and took each of our statements and examined my son's room. They did a quick scour of the forest outside. It seemed not a single piece of evidence was found. They had begun to leave when something hanging from a very high branch caught their eye. It was a piece of material, black, pinstripped, much like the suit I bought while on vacation. I pointed this out to the police, and they inquired to see my suit. I gladly showed them the way. When they opened the closet door, what they found was beyond my belief. Wrapped in my now tattered suit was my son. Completely drenched in blood. He didn't look conscious. Both myself and the police were shocked and disgusted. I couldn't take it. I blacked out. When I came to, I was in an unfamiliar place. Gray painted walls, small windows on one of them, one exceptionally bland table. Great. I'm in the fucking interrogation room. I sat there, alone for the good part of an hour, before an actual human being life entered the room with me. By now my memory's a bit hazy, but I'll try to sum up the best conversation I can. The officer sat down with me. I could already see what his face was going to say to me. I wish I could unsee it, but I can't unsee that, and I can't unhear what he was about to tell me. Your son didn't survive, sir. Deepest sympathies to you and your family. You've not been proven guilty, but evidence, unfortunately, leads towards you being the murderer of your child. A further investigation will be held. You'll be brought back to your home, but you'll be under constant supervision. I was driven home in the back of a police cruiser. The last time I was in one of those was in high school. You know, when vandalism was cool. I was welcomed with open arms from a still sobbing wife and my poor emotionless son. Going back wasn't easy. Thankfully, we didn't have to stay long. The police explained that if we were going to stay in a hotel for a few days. So we gathered our things when a picture on my fridge caught my eye. It was my late son, one of his pictures. When I saw it, my heart hit ground at zero. In the cutest crayon drawing you can imagine, my son was standing next to a tall, faceless man in a black suit. I made sure no one was around, and I stuffed that picture into my pocket. The hotel was what you would normally expect. Simple wallpaper, 2 twin beds, 1 TV, that cheap, flowery design on the wall that nobody ever likes, but whatever saves them money. It would have to do, since we're stuck here. We settled in, placing out our stuff, and laying down. I, on the other hand, went to the bathroom, the only place that I knew I would get the privacy I needed. I locked the door and took that infernal picture from my pocket. I scoured that page for what seemed like ages for clues. But as always, it was pointless. All that was there was a crude drawing of his name scribbled into the bottom corner. The thing that unnerved me most was the fact that the Slenderman had no face. Still no identity. Not a single outstanding feature. Why does it rattle me to the core that he doesn't have a face? It doesn't make any sense. God. I've had enough of the stress for today. I need to sleep. Badly. The night was rough, but I still managed to sleep. Not a single dream the Slender Man either, thankfully. Then a banging came from the door. Being half asleep the whole time, it scared the shit out of me. I turned to my right to look at the 5:14 a.m. glaring at me. Oh God, heads were gonna roll. I dragged myself out of bed and very slowly opened the door, not being afraid to show my pissed off face. It was that police officer again. He took a very stern look at me, but I could see the panic on his face. He told me my son was missing. What? What do you mean my son's missing? Nothing clicked here. It took me a minute to wake up. After all, it was 5 in the morning. But finally, reality, as terrible as that's been lately, finally caught up with me again. Which means my son's body was missing. Snatched right from the hospital. But by this time, oh, I knew where he was. I needed to get back to that forest. I had to find the remains of my suit. It was the only way I was going to stop Slenderman, and hopefully find some way that my son could be okay again. Some way my family could be okay again. But I knew this was in no way going to be easy. I had to ask the police officer if he could drive me back to my house, pretending I'd forgotten something. He pondered for a moment, but obliged to my demands. This time, I was allowed to sit in the passenger seat. The ride there was quiet. I thought this was a good time to get some sleep. And he didn't want to start any conversation, contemplating my possible status as a homicidal maniac, which is preposterous. When we got there, I was careful to make out to where no one could see me. I entered the house through the front door and quickly escaped out the back and headed into that dark, foreboding forest. It was still very dark, so traversing the heavily wooded area was not easy. The only light that came through was that of the moon, so I walked, nearly blind, hoping that I would find some scrap of my suit. It seemed to be impossible, until amidst the darkness, I saw a scrap of paper. It was white, so it stood out like a sore thumb. I leaned down to pick it up, and when I turned around, what I saw completely horrified me. It was another drawing by my son, with both him and Slenderman. But no, this one was different. There were 3 other people. A boy the same height as him, and an older looking girl, and another boy just as big as that girl. Oh no. It was us, my family. My son drew us with Slenderman. That's when I saw a beam of light. It was a police officer. I ran up to him and showed him the picture. I explained to him that my family was in great danger. But all he told me was that there was nothing he could do? What do you mean, there was nothing he could do? He is the police. He should be able to save my family. He said we should go back to the car, and we should go back to the hotel. A million thoughts ran through my head. Shall I coincide, or should I resist? What I did next is peanuts compared to what was about to unfold. But I didn't know, and looking back, oh hell, I did not want to. I gave in to the police officer's request and began to head back to the car. But he was foolish. He had his back towards me, so I picked up a fair 6 stone and brought it down upon his head. He staggered a bit, but he fell to the ground. I took his car keys off him and ran towards the car. Still dark outside, but that did not matter. I needed to get to that hotel as fast as possible. I screeched to an immediate halt at the hotel parking lot, and I ran towards the door where we were staying. I swung open the door, and behold, the one thing I was trying to prevent. Amidst all the blood, the painted room were 3 bodies making a circle around Slender Man. He turned and looked at me. His hollow, non-existent eyes stared deep into the absence of life that he had taken away from me. He induced emotions I had never felt before. Emotions without names. They filled my brain, they induced my body, they infected everything. It was like he was making me feel every possible feeling ever invented, ever felt. And with an outstretched hand, he said but one thing. One thing that burned into the back of my mind forever. Sirens came from behind me. I turned to see the police cruisers pull into the parking lot, and I watched them get out. Using car doors as shields, they aimed their guns at me. I was the bad guy. I didn't kill them. But I raised my hands above my head. I looked back to Slenderman. They had to see him. They had to see his empty face. They had to see his thin body. They had to see his suit. They had to know he did this. But the Slenderman faded to nothing, leaving behind only a tattered suit in a heap on the floor. He killed my whole fucking family, and I got blamed for it. My life is never going to be the same. And something told me I was never going to see him again. The only thing I had left. I would never be able to kill him for what he did, even if I figured out how to. Everything up until the white padded walls isn't exactly all clear as it once was. I've been told that after they saw me at the hotel with my DNA on the suit, I was the primary culprit. I was the primary culprit. Yeah, killed my whole family. After they arrested me and subjected me to frivolous testing, to which they got nothing more than unintelligible noises, I was submitted to this place. The white padded walls. The same white padded walls I see day after day after every day. No one will ever know what happened to me and my family. The emotions that were broadcasted to me caused me to lose my ability to speak. Now all I can do is write and draw. I write out the emotions that Slenderman felt. I draw the things he's seen. They are what keep me here. I am a victim of another man's emotion. Sometimes I feel like I've become the Slenderman. Like we are the same being. And that day, I learned something. We were Slender. I've been waiting a long time for this. Bring it on!